Okay, and thank you, Hans, for joining us as well. So hopefully you will, together with Denise, answer all the questions along the way, so I don't have to do overtime. Okay, thank you. So I would like to start talking about some basic information about what LiDAR data are, how to use it, and yeah, the tools we will be using with LiDAR data alongside with the Oracle database. So a little bit about the practices we have done when working with LiDAR data. So, and as Denise mentioned, this is the first part of a two-part series talking about LiDAR data. So we will be doing more advanced stuff at the end of August in our Ask Tom spatial session then, including showing how to process LiDAR data, how to convert LiDAR data into different data models, how to visualize LiDAR data, and those things will be part of the second session. But let's get started with some basic information about LiDAR data. So what is LiDAR? So LiDAR data are produced using remote sensing devices. Those devices send out laser light, and this laser light is reflected by the surfaces that is hit from the laser light, and the reflection is measured together. The reflection is measured from the sensing systems, and from the data that is captured as a reflection, the LiDAR data set is created. LiDAR data are used to create three-dimensional representations of real-world objects. This is due to the nature of how the data is captured and what the data represents. And so you can create these representations of your environment in general, of surfaces, of objects. You can also estimate the range or the distance between objects. And yeah, it's generally used to create digital products such as digital elevation models, canopy models, or to estimate biomass in building models, creating contour lines, or generally when it comes to create digital twins of real-world objects. LiDAR data are also known as point clouds, and in the next, what I've included in the next slides, I will typically use the term point clouds, but it's similar to LiDAR, so I will use probably both terms as I go along with you. So the sensor data that is captured and from which the point cloud data sets are created, the standard format for storing this type of information is the so-called LAS file. There are other formats that are used to provide LiDAR data, such as E57, but the most or the best known format typically is the LAS file. And there is a compressed version of LAS, and this is called LAZ. So it's due to the nature of the data set that they are typically very large data sets. There is a compressed and optimized version of the LAS files. And those LAS files or point cloud data sets, they contain a collection of points alongside with attributes. And those attributes are first and foremost are the coordinates of the captured objects or the points that represent the real world objects. So the X, Y, and Z coordinates. So we have the 3 dimensions here. Very often, as an outcome of the sensor devices, we also already have a point cloud, point classification. So the point is classified, and this is typically also reflected in the data set with an explanation what classes are used, and which value represents which classification or which class. There are other attributes like the intensity of the return pulse, also the RGB values, red, green, blue colors are returned as a value or as an attribute, and several other attributes. What you can see here on the left side in the list. I'm sorry, that was too fast. I wanted to highlight this part here on the right side. So what you can see here, these are the attributes captured for the data set that is reflected on the right side. So we have X, Y, Z. This is the basic, but alongside those X, Y, Z values, we have a couple of other values as well. And very often this GPS time here is also a very important attribute because nowadays it's more and more important that you capture those LiDAR data for different timestamp, and then you can compare what has changed over time. And for that, the timestamp is an important measure. So let me go back to clear the drawing here and go back. Okay. So what you can see here on the right side, I will explain in a little bit in more details what which tool I've used to create this output. But you can see here all the information that is inside a LAS file with different values that represent metadata for the point clouds and the attributes I've talked about. And what you can see further down, if you look at this part here, then you can even see a histogram of the classified points. So this is all included in the LAS files. Okay, let's go next. And of course, I talked about the type of usage of point clouds, and it is used for creating digital twins or building city models. And here we have a point cloud data set, which is originated by our partner Point Cloud Technology. And it's the scene of a construction site where we have the different buildings, where we can see the different buildings. We see a river, we see cranes, vessels, and other types of buildings and facilities. And we have this three-dimensional dimensional representation of a real world scene here represented as LiDAR data with a different coloring. And inside the data set with a different information about X, Y, Z, especially the height information for the certain points. That's very important fact. And I have one more example for a point cloud data set. Here we have a point cloud data set that includes the trees for the city of Prague. And this data set is meshed or combined with 3D building models with a solids or city model for the buildings. So here we have a combination of different types of data sets, all representations of 3D data. Okay. So any questions so far? Do we have any questions, Hans, Denise? Hans, do you want to add something over here?
No questions at the
Did I
moment.
miss anything important?
No, I don't think so. In terms of use cases, maybe in case people were wondering, right? You've talked about digital twin of the as-built environment. So using this for city models, if you want to do simulations where you need the third dimension, whether it be noise emission or computing the optimal location for mobile phone cell towers or something. That's what people typically do. You've just shown this wonderful image of Prague with the vegetation. Of course, it's very useful to do any kind of analysis on vegetation because you can determine or you can detect vegetation so nicely with LiDAR. So that's certainly a good use case. I've seen it being used in tourism, right? Creating a digital representation of inner cities and making it attractive for either to attract tourists or to attract sports events, showing websites what the facilities look like and trying to attract like international events to a city. That's what we've seen. Of course, anything 3D is also being used by the military. So these are the things which are typically being done with these types of 3D models. That's the little sort of contribution I can make here. But, feel free to
thank you very much. Yeah. Very good to have even more examples, so you can imagine where to use LiDAR data. Okay, what are the typical challenges when we talk about point cloud data sets? So first and foremost, it is the data volume typically. So one data set typically contains of millions of points, or if you have several scenes that stitched together, represent a large area captured as 3D data set that contains even more points, so hundreds of millions of points. If you think of representing a complete city as point clouds, this is a very large data set. And since the technologies behind or the technologies and the sensors that capture the data, they are enhanced year by year, and typically with those enhancement, they have an even bigger density of the points that are captured. So we even need more space, or we have a lot more points within those data sets with the development of the sensors. We also have the problem of LiDAR scenes or that are captured from the devices, and then that represent overlapping areas. And also typically when you send out laser light, you get back the reflected light, but this reflected light also contains noisy information which you need to handle in order to figure out what you need to extract, or what you can ignore, or what's important to include in your further analysis. Then, of course, versioning the data sets. I mentioned before, the timestamp is an important information in the data set because you can take the LiDAR scenes at different times, and then comparing the two scenes at different timestamp, you can figure out what has changed in between. So versioning the LiDAR data sets and then being able to compare third is a very important topic here. So these are just a few things about the data volume and the type of information. And with the data volume, of course, we have the topic of storing all the data. So the question is, where do we store the data? What do we need to do in terms of securing the data? And if we have this large amounts of data, then the next one of the questions also is how can we efficiently store the data? Are there any compression methods we can apply? And when the data are stored, we also want to access the data. So is there an index, or do we need to index the data in order to efficiently access the data and retrieve the information we need with a high performance? Yeah, and what is the actual the optimal format when it comes to analyzing LiDAR data? So there are lots of questions regarding how to store the data and how what kind of computation is done, and how we can make sure that the computation is done efficiently in order to provide the results that as soon as possible without a delay. And for the performance part, of course, being able to parallel process the data set is a very important factor. In terms of analysis, of course, what can we do with the data set? We already explained where LiDAR data is used and what the digital products could be derived from LiDAR data. So we can create surface models, digital elevation models. We can extract the contour lines from the LiDAR data. Those are typical products derived from LiDAR data. And of course, the important thing, and this is one of the major criteria for us to put LiDAR data or to store and manage LiDAR data in the ORCID database, is the ability to correlate LiDAR data together with other data, and not only with other types of spatial data like vector and raster data, or with network data, but generally with all data you store in your ORCID databases. So these are a few thoughts about challenges you might have when it comes to using and storing and analyzing point cloud data.
Karin,
yep.
Just a very quick one before you move on to the tools. We've had two questions, one on chat, one on Q&A. So again, the comment, kindly ask your questions in the Q&A box. Chandresh, I've seen your question in the chat. That's fine. We'll answer it. But ideally, just for us to keep track of all the questions, it would be great if you could ask your questions in the Q&A box, because then we can keep track of them. But the actual question that has come up twice now was, how do we get from point cloud data to colored images like what we've seen? And I've already answered one of the questions in the Q&A in written form. The thing is, the laser scanner doesn't pick up the color. Yeah, it's just a laser scanner. It captures the reflection, but it doesn't pick up the color. But typically what we see is that these laser scanners are combined with RGB cameras, or regular cameras, picking up the color. And then automatically you can merge the reflection of the laser scanning point with the color coming from the image, so that you know that if this is something which is green, you can associate that information with the point already, which makes it sort of easier to render graphically, because then you can see a little more. The other option, and you've seen that Karin using this a moment ago, on this image of the industrial site with the cranes and stuff. There, the coloring was based on the Z coordinate. So you basically take the height, give it a color so that then you can see how high above the ground is something. Is there something which is sticking out, or is it all ground level? And that's sort of an artificial way of coloring things depending on other attributes. I hope that clarifies the two questions. Sorry, Karin. It was just a good point
Perfect. No, sorry. Perfect. I haven't seen the questions, so it's good that you picked them up and answered it. Okay, thank you. Okay, so, sorry. Okay, so what are the tools we typically work with together with LiDAR data sets? So one tool, of course, we will be looking at is the Orica database, where we can store LiDAR data. But how do we get the data into the Orica database? And for that, there are different methods to do that. And I would like to just briefly go explain a few of the tools we have come across and we have been using over the years. And let me start with the tool called LAST tools, or better, it is a tool set, command line tools that you can use to load, process, transform, and also visualize LiDAR data sets. So it's a very rich command line tool set. Some of the tools within the tool set are open source tools, others are free to use, and some of them are closed source. So if you want to try out the LAST tools, make sure that you read the terms and conditions to use the LAST tools. In what I'm going to show today, I've used the open source and free. I think both of the things I've used are open source or free, so that's fine to reuse those tools as well. And there's also a new graphical user interface for the LAST tools, which you can find underneath the rapidlasso.de LASLook URL. So you can try that out. But the toolset itself also contains a command line interface to with a viewer to also look and see what kind of data you have and how the data look like. Yeah, and we will be seeing an example of this last viewer a little later on. The second tool I want to talk about is QGIS. QGIS is also an open source tool that is very often used by GIS people, but also other people interested in looking at or using spatial data. It's open source software, as I said, and you can load and visualize LAS files in its compressed and uncompressed version. So here you can see an example of a LAS file that I've uploaded into QGIS. And of course, there are several Python libraries which you can use, especially to also visualize LiDAR data. And there's also a tool called PDAL, which has a Python library which you can use to include it in your Python scripts. So I will concentrate on using LAST tools, and I'm going to use the LAST tools for two things. The first thing is the last one of the tools in the toolset is converting the LAS files into a text file. And then we can use another tool called yeah, I'm going to show it a little later on. There is a second command line tool which we will be using to load this CSV or text file into the Oracle database. I've set up the last tools on the compute machine. So there is a version for Windows, there is a version for Linux. Here you can see an example how to set it up on Linux. But as I said, you can also run it on Windows. It's similarly the steps you need to do in order to run the last tools properly on your machine. And yeah, as I said, you can use the last tools to convert the last files and also to load the last files. Here is what I mentioned before. There is one tool called Last View, and this can be used. There's also a graphical user interface where you can see that you can point to the data sets you have and you want to visualize or you want to do things with. And here you select those data files and then you can view that. What I've done here is viewing the data set, and then this dialog pops up where the actual command is shown, like this one, last view, and then you have a few parameters, and then it starts processing the data set, and the result of that is what you can see here on the right side. It's the image of the last file. And what I've downloaded and used in the demo parts of this presentation is a set of last files captured for the state of for one of the states in Germany, and it's a set of last files representing an area, and in total we have 20 tiles of last files, or represent 20 last files representing the tiles that stitched together represent exactly this area here. So we have on the X coordinate, we have 2 tiles, and for the vertical we have 10 tiles. So in total we have 20 tiles representing that area here. And with this data set, I've created a couple of scripts in order to load the data and to store the data in the database and then process the data. And that's what we will be looking at in a moment. Before looking at the actual scripts, I want to explain how LiDAR data are managed in the Oracle database, how they are stored. And for that, let me explain with the first approach how to store LiDAR data. And as I said before, there is a similar term called point clouds. And what you see here is a data type called SDO underscore points. So you probably are familiar with the data type SDO underscore geometry and other data types starting with SDO, like SDO raster. SDO raster. So SDO is spatial data object, and the PC stands for point clouds. And here is the signature for this point cloud object type. I don't want to go too much into the details regarding this object type, because using this object type for certain types of processing, like creating the digital elevation model or creating contour lines and other things, that's part of the second session we will be having in August. And today I'm going to just briefly explain about this object type. The important thing for that object type is that it has the information about the extent. So where is this located, and So the spatial extension of that point cloud data set is important, and this is stored in this attribute here. Sorry for my drawing here. And the other important attribute here is this so-called block table, a BL key table. And this is a table that is defined and is represented further down here. So we have here the point cloud table with the SDOPC object type, and this points to so-called point cloud block tables, or one or more block tables. And these block tables contain a blob representation of all the points within that are blocked together in one block, that are grouped together in one block. So you typically, when loading point clouds into the Oracle database and then creating these SDOPC object types, one of the parameters is that you define the size of the block. So how many points will be part of one block, and this block will be stored in the block table. And as you can see, one point cloud can have one or more blocks of points that belong to that point cloud.
So this approach is kind of similar to what we have with
raster.
Georeferenced raster imaging, correct? Right. So you have one logical object, which is the point cloud, and then under the covers, it's split up into physical blocks, which has the advantage of being able to access little bits and pieces of the point cloud in a fast and efficient manner, so that you can basically extract the relevant part of the point cloud quickly, rather than having to load the complete point cloud in one go, which can be huge, as Karin was saying, and then sort of transferring that to your client or whatever. So using the database basically to have one logical object with all metadata, but physically splitting it up into manageable chunks. That's the idea of the object type, just like for SDO or raster.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, the way of storing these blobs, or the blocks as blobs, makes it possible that you can apply compression, database compression. You can also encrypt the data, or alongside with compression, you can also deduplicate the data. So that's part of how the blocks are internally stored as so-called secure files. So this is the object type approach to store point clouds or LiDAR data sets. And since we acquired many years ago, or we started many years ago to produce our Exadata database machines with specific hardware underneath and with specific features to use the hardware underneath. A very efficient way of storing point clouds is to actually store those in flat tables containing columns for all these different attributes I mentioned before. And especially since most of the data is numeric values, those are very efficiently stored in the storage cells of this Exadata machine. And that's why we have a second data model for storing point clouds, which is called flat tables or XYZ tables. There are several terms used to talk about storing point clouds in flat tables. So as I mentioned, this data type is especially useful if you have an Oracle Exadata underneath, which is also the case for all your autonomous database instances. And for example, I typically use an autonomous database instance, and that's why I started putting the examples together here for using the flat table model to store the point cloud data sets. And along with the Exadata, we have features like hybrid columnar compression, so which goes very nicely with this XYZ attributes columns and all the other numeric columns we have. The parallel processing is enabled here. SmartScan we have supported, so very good things to work with this type of data model. And there is one more advantage. We do not need indices here in order to efficiently access the data. And of course, what we can also do is using tools like the SQL loader to load especially the text files derived from LAS files, loading those into the Oracle database. But we also have a preprocessor that can be used together with SQL Loader in order to directly load LAS files. The preprocessor, I'm not going to show the preprocessor today, but it is available, and it can directly load LAS files, so the uncompressed version of the LAS files. Yeah, and one more advantage of using this approach is, as we have shown before, when having the SDOPC object type, we have the blocks containing the actual points stored in blobs. So there is this blocking process done in order to store the data. That's not needed for storing the data in this flat table. And this makes it very attractive when you have kind of volatile data sets where you add new points, remove existing points, so the data set changes more often than it is a static data set. So these are the two types of storing point cloud data sets. What can we do in terms of processing the data sets? I've extracted the current functions on procedures that can be used to, for point clouds, and these are all assembled in the SDOPC underscore package, so in a PL/SQL package, where all the different functions are put together. Some of the functions can be used for the SDOPC object type. Most of the functions here are used for the object type. Some of them can be used for the flat data model. And what we can also do, and what we'll be seeing in August, is how we can start with a flat model and then creating the SDOPC objects from either an extraction of the point clouds, a clipping clip data set, or the entire point cloud data set to represent this as object, SDOPC object, and then applying all the functions we have in place to process the point cloud data sets. And this includes also functions like PC underscore difference, what I mentioned before, that we can detect the changes between the point cloud data sets at two different timestamps. Or what is also an interesting point, what's also an interesting analysis is to figure out what the nearest neighbors for a point or for each point in a point cloud data set are. So these are the functions further down, SDO underscore PC underscore NN for nearest neighbor. And also we do have a conversion function to create an SDO geometry object from point clouds, which we can then, of course, use with the typical tools we have in place for like Spatial Studio to represent the spatial data sets. I've included here the documentation. It contains all the information about how to store the data, how to process the data with sample code. And there is also sample code which you can find as part of the Oracle database examples. Unfortunately, the database examples don't come with an autonomous database, but if you have your own installation of the Oracle database and maybe also installed the Oracle database examples, and you will see that there is an MD folder inside the Oracle Home, which has a demo folder, and there you have different demo scenarios for the different types of spatial data. And one of the scenarios is about point clouds, and you can find the examples, code examples for working with point clouds inside this folder structure. Any more questions so far?
No questions in chat, Karen.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I've just extracted here two examples of processing point clouds, and specifically that have the methods to work with the flat tables. One, for example, is the clip underscore PC. So clipping the point cloud, which means we compare the actual point cloud data set with SDO geometry. Can be either a 2D or a 3D SDO geometry, which is our query window, and then we find out which points are included or interact with this query window, and then we get the points back in the result set. And what we typically do then is once we have extracted the point cloud of interest, then we can convert this or process it further, either by converting it to an SDOPC object and then creating maybe contour lines or what other function, applying other functions, or using it with within different types of analysis. The create contour lines or create contour geometries is also one of the functions that can be applied to SDOPC or flat tables, and it creates the geometries that represent the contour lines for the different elevations, which are defined inside the input parameters for the function. And here you see the signatures for the two functions, like clip underscore PC, and the specific function for the flat files is underscore flat. And for the create contour geometries, we have an overloaded function that can either take an SDOPC or a flat table. So how would a LiDAR workflow look like? And I've already explained it on verbally, and let's just have a look at a very simple draft. To work with LiDAR data, we typically either load the LiDAR data directly from the last files, or we have a converted data set that represents text files, and then we can load these text files into the point cloud tables, either as SDOPC or as flat tables. and then we can apply those queries and clipping functions, and we can convert it to geometries, and then using the geometries to either visualize the data set or doing further analysis, or as before, we apply other functions like generating the contour lines or deriving a digital elevation model from it. So this is when we talk about flat files, but it's similar for SDO-PC, what we can do. So loading it either directly from LAS files or from the derived text files, and then building the SDO-PC objects, and then doing the same things as explained before. So this is a very high level thing. And since typically the first obstacle when it comes to work with LiDAR data is how do I get the data into my database? I've included here an example in more detail and explaining how to load a set of these LAS files into the Oracle database. And I mentioned before that I've picked a few data sets that are published as open data for one of the states in Germany. We have this point cloud data set with certain resolution representing a specific area in this state. And I've also included the information about the licensing here. So, and this is the data set, as I mentioned before. I have 20 files with LAS data. And then the first thing, there is a mistake here. It's not PETA, it's LAS tools. I'm sorry, I'm going to correct it afterwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm using the LAS tools, and the first tool within the toolsets of the LAS tools is LAS info, and the specific version for 64 architecture is this is LAS info 64. Then this is my LAS file, and then I extract the number of points within the LAS file to display it, and I try to capture a few more information about what's represented by this LAS file. So this is the first thing. So some kind of analysis looking at the LAS file, and here is what we can capture, what we can extract from the files. So this is just to get an overview, and the next step is converting the LAS files using the second command, which is LAS to text 64, and there we get take the file. In this case, these are compressed LAS files. We define which of the parameters that are stored in the, or which of the attributes stored in the LAS files we want to extract, and then creating a text file with commas separated, and that's what we run here. So I measured the time to get an idea of how long it takes, and then extract the information from it. And what I'm going to do here is actually, since I have these 20 data sets, I want to make sure that I can load everything in one table, and to identify that this is data from this file. I've added 2 more columns here. I've created an attribute inside my Oracle database table, which is called tile ID, and it's just an incremented numeric value. And I've also created a description or a source file column inside the table where I store the file name in order to be able to reproduce where the data come from. And this is the result of it. So all the attributes extracted from the last files, and here the one of the this is the tile ID and the file name. This is what I can load very nicely into the Oracle database, and for this to load it, I've created this LiDAR points table with all the attributes I've extracted plus the additional attributes, tile ID and source file. Typically, loading very large data sets here, I set it to no logging, so it's a little easier and faster to go with. And then in this case, I've used SQL Loader to load the data set. And you probably know SQL Loader. It requires a control file where you define which data are extracted from the data set to be inserted into the table. And here you just load the data set and run, load the data set. For the 20 files, there ran about 3 minutes to load in total 80 million points. Well, that's kind of fast doing it this way. But of course, if you have millions and billions of points, it takes a little longer. What I haven't used here is parallel loading. This could be also defined that you have a degree of parallelism applied when uploading the data in order to use your underlying hardware even better.
Yeah, and if anybody here on the call is interested in trying this out with substantial data sets, do let us know. We've done a fair amount of work with these types of data sets, right? One of the examples we did, for example, was a country-wide data set covering all of the Netherlands with not 80 million, but 640 billion points in compressed LAS files, and we managed to load those into an Exadata box pretty quickly using, as Karin said, parallelism and a couple of other tricks and best practices. So if you have large volumes of LAS data and you want to experiment with that, do let us know.
Yeah. It's also the reason why I've included the code snippets here, so you can do it on your side as well. So just to mention, SQL Loader requires having the database instant client installed. So just to make sure that it's properly installed. So
Karin, as you were just talking about the scripts, I assume you've put them somewhere in your GitHub repo, right?
Yeah,
so that folks can pick it up from there.
I haven't checked it in yet, but I have it all in my GitHub repo for the Ask Tom sessions. Yeah. Excluding, of course, my passwords here. So I've anonymized the database service username password. So you need to replace it with your credentials. And that's what you can see here now inside the database. And going further, and that's the last thing I want to show for today is one of the functions to process the data. So here we want to clip the data sets. The data set. So I'm creating a new table in this case called LiDAR points clips clip, and then my query window is this geometry. So I want to clip out the points that interact with this query window, which is my geometry here. And I take all the points in LiDAR points that are inside this query window. Where do I know from that it takes the points that are interacting with this query window? There is this mask operator you know from SDO relate, for example, where you define the type of topological relationship, and if this is null, then the default goes with mask equal any interact. So it's the same what you would do when comparing two geometry data sets. And then using bulk collect, a very efficient method to collect the data and then storing the result set into that LiDAR points clip table. And in total, I have this data set now contains, I think, 40,000 points. And this would be typically the first processing to extract exactly the point data set you are interested in, and then take these to further process it and analyze it. Okay, so in terms of loading data, doing the kind of pre-processing with converting it to text, then uploading it to the database, storing it in the very efficient and easy to use flat table model, and then doing first processing of the LiDAR data. That's what we have looked at today, and then further things we will look at in the next session, end of August.
That's almost like a Netflix series here, a cliffhanger at the point where
exactly,
it's most
that's what I thought. That's what I thought. And I didn't want to stress everybody since it's summer and vacation time. I thought we might take it a little easier than typically. Yeah. Let me just briefly share with you a few resources of where you can pick up free LiDAR data to look at and try things out. So you have seen the Geoport of Prague, where I've picked up the data set. There is this LiDAR and area ecologically.com for Europe, where you can find LiDAR data, and yeah, so and the yeah, and here the first one is a collection of free LiDAR sources. So just feel free to look at those and take the set you are interested in. Yeah, this is just one of the paid or services that provide LiDAR data. Okay, so this is what I wanted to present today with a cliffhanger. Yeah. Okay, maybe can we check if there are any more questions Hans and Denise haven't taken care of?
Let me just quickly. There's okay. That was just a comment. Thanks, Mariam. Mariam found the session very useful, Karin. So
thank you. Yeah, Mariam, I've seen that you've created also a nice Python notebook where you work with LiDAR data. So yeah, maybe we can look at it also in our next session. Yeah,
that would be great. All right, thank you, Karin. We really appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to the next session. Thank you everyone for staying on, and we'll have this recording uploaded in the next few days.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karin. Great job.